Here we go, gang. An hour late, but not one musical note short. I did give everybody fair warning earlier today when I posted that I might be running late today because I had some errands to run. So why don't we just make up for lost time and get right down to the meat of the matter, which is this week's episode of Tent Talks Tunes. We're on, kids. We're live. We are happening. There's an absolute minimum of jive at play because that's the way I roll. I don't like to waste time on jive turkey bullshit. I like to really tell it like it is and make things happen. So we're making it happen. Yeah, I wasn't here last week because I was in rehearsals with the almighty Anti-Scene. You know, these guys with this album that I was just using as a place card. Yes. We were in rehearsals because we had some shows coming up. We were playing gigs in Piedmont, South Carolina, Atlanta, Georgia, and Fairhope, Alabama. So there I was in the studio, hashing it out, cranking it out, mashing it out, and making that particular thing a reality. And I must say that it was well worth it, as it always is. We had 3 dynamite shows. Meanwhile, I want to say hello to Alan Versipellis. Alan is always the first guy in the house. Salute to you, Alan. Mr. Greg Crawford is here. Greg will probably be able to testify as to the general wonderfulability of the Anti-Scene live experience, specifically as it occurred in Fairhope, Alabama, because he and his family were there. They saw, they felt, they heard. They had their respective chest cavities vibrated with the sheer force of the Anti-Scene sonic attack. Felt good from where I was. And it looked like the people out there in the crowd were having a good time too. So I would consider that to be mission accomplished. Speaking of mission accomplished, we have, I believe, making his North Carolina debut. Right here, right now. I'm pretty sure this is the very first time that we have had a visit from, you guessed it, Mr. Curiosity himself. Let's see if I can get an armful of this guy here. Hope you guys don't think I'm being enigmatic or coy. Longtime viewers of Tent Talks Tunes know that we have a certain camera hog, a certain publicity dog, in the shape of a fine, fabulous, felicitous, furry-faced, ferocious, yet friendly fellow who is just out of reach. He's behind the camera. I can't get a grip on the guy because it's very awkward. I'm going to see if I can do this. Erica, you guessed it. This little guy doesn't know it, but the people are calling Harry, 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 Harry. And I don't mean Krishna, 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 Krishna. I mean, come over here, little fella. Ugh, boy, what an awkward load I got. Yes, the one and only Harry the cat. There he is, my boy. He's been here in my new home in North Carolina the whole time. But this is his first time on camera. He still might be a little bit camera shy. That's why he took the long way around and hopped up on the desk behind the camera. And there he goes. I have no doubt that Harry will become acclimated to his new surroundings. We'll be seeing plenty of him in the near and far future here on Tent Talks Tunes. And by the way, in case people have been wondering, the Harry the Cat CD, as with so many things on my label, TPOS, that label right there, TPOS, as is the case with so many things, the Harry the Cat CD has been in the works for quite some time. But steadily, progress is being made. I work on it a little bit here, a little bit there, whenever I'm able to find that rare intersection of time and inspiration to work on a given project at a given moment. But Harry, the cover art is slowly coming together. I got the tracks all sequenced and edited and titled. So the wheels, as slowly as they move, do move. The Harry the Cat CD is going to happen. And I got a message earlier today from TPOS recording artist Gary Forney. He of Iowa Mountain Tour and Pumpkin fame. Gary said, "So are you going to release my album or what?" I said, "Yes, Gary, I am going to do it. But this move that I'm in the middle of from Connecticut to North Carolina, it's a big thing. It's a huge thing. Anybody out there who's had to move their entire lives across a number of states, can I get an amen? Can I get a huzzah? Can I get a thumbs up or a heart or something to let me know that you know the kind of pain, misery, suffering, agony, and just general condition of being in the middle of a Jeremiad that moving is. Especially if you're a fella like myself who's got a lot of stuff. I got a lot of stuff. I'm not only a collector of stuff, I'm a dealer of stuff. I'll drink to that. With fresh drafts of room temperature Newton tap. Oh yes, oh yes. It's been a big task. I've been here in North Carolina now for about 6 weeks, and the household is coalescing. Order is being made out of chaos, but you know, I'm a one-man show basically. I do have some help. I got a lot of friends who have helped me out. Mondo Braswell's been very helpful. Brandon Yitai has been very helpful. Pissy Chrissy has been of great assistance. But at the end of the day, I'm the guy who's here 24 hours, 7 days a week, and I'm the guy upon whom the task rests. But I have to sandwich the moving activities in between trying to make a living. For example, on my Discogs, eBay, and Bandcamp stores, which are partially up. I have the entire TPOS catalogs listed on Discogs, eBay, and a chunk of it on Bandcamp. I don't have my regular inventory of used records, tapes, CDs, VHSs, 8-tracks, Lord knows what else. I don't have that listed on my Discogs store yet because I still haven't gotten it all out, and I haven't gotten it all in one place, and I don't have it browsable and accessible. But I'm working on it. Oh, I'm working on it. The reason I'm late today is because I had to drive to the city of Morganton, North Carolina. Hello, Stacy Peak, if you're out there. To pick up a couple of banquet tables, which will enable me to get my vinyl albums properly boxed and browsable, and therefore pickable, and therefore listable on Discogs. So that's what's been going on, you know, and of course we're interrupted by great things like playing shows. Oh man, Piedmont, South Carolina, Tribbles. Always a fun stop. A big salute to Mr. and Mrs. Tribble for hosting a most welcoming and friendly environment for traveling bands. I first discovered Tribbles in Piedmont when I was doing my tour of duty with Profanatica a little over a year ago. And I got to admit, we were somewhat nonplussed when the tour bus pulled into the parking lot of an old gas station. And this being after being routed quite some distance through the back roads of South Carolina. We didn't know where we were, and we didn't know why we were at this old repurposed gas station. But it turns out the Tribbles was a dynamite stop. Really, really great fun. Really great people. They're the ones who have the jukebox. I posted a photo of the jukebox that said, "No trap, no bro country, and no Nickelback. Management reserves the right to terminate lousy music." When I saw that, I knew I was in the right place. And sure enough, we had a good gig there. We had a really great gig with Anti-Scene on top of all that. Opening up were our pal Zach Hembry and his new band, the Blue Ridge Death Cult, who killed it as always. And opening was a really cool band from, I think, Greenville and Charlotte called Camino, who rocked hard. So that was a fine Thursday in Piedmont, South Carolina. Next night, Atlanta, Georgia, at the Star Bar, our home away from our home away from home in hot Atlanta. We played there a little while ago, and the management said, from now on, when you play Atlanta, you have to play the Star Bar. And we said, yes, sir. No arguing here. If you want it to happen, Anti-Scene will make it happen. So we did. We played. Star Bar. Totally rocked. And we had our special guest. I was talking about this a lot. Our special guest, the one, the only, Abdullah the Butcher. Yes, one of the greats of professional wrestling. I'm not talking about sports entertainment. I don't do sports entertainment. Mr. Tent does not talk sports entertainment. I talk professional wrestling. And Abdullah is one of the old school giants of the sport, and he's still very much alive and still very much kicking. And he came down to our gig and set up a table and signed pictures and posed with people, and was just amazing to have the one and only Abdullah the Butcher on board with us at the gig. Rick Del Santo of Connecticut is tuned in right now. Rick is a person who understands the importance of Abdullah the Butcher. In fact, Rick, would you be so kind as to post a link to your wrestling show? Because I think the people need to know. Rick is a guy who's got a very deep knowledge of wrestling, and is happy to spread that knowledge. So Rick, let's see a link, man. Turn the people on to what you do in the professional wrestling realm, because they need what you got. What can I tell you? Let's see. John Herbin from Tucson, Arizona says, Iron Sheik, the greatest of all time. Well, you know, that's a point that we can debate endlessly, and will debate endlessly given the chance, especially if you find yourself in the Anti-Scene tour van with a 9-hour drive ahead of you. The hair-splitting, ear-splitting, psyche-splitting arguments and discussions about professional wrestling and or Planet of the Apes and or Star Wars or Kiss. I mean, dude, drives with Anti-Scene are never boring because the hot topics run endless and run deep. They do not run silent. They just keep on running. So imagine having Abdullah the Butcher in the audience at your gig and getting to sing a song about him, and looking in the back of the room and seeing Abdullah and his management team waving forks in the air, pumping their fists in time to the savage beat of Anti-Scene. It was truly sublime, and I don't mean a shitty-ass band. It was a sublime moment. It was wonderful. And we got Abdullah to cut some hot promos for us. I'm not going to say for what, but you know at Anti-Scene we're always brainstorming as well as barnstorming. So just remember you heard it here first. Unless you heard it last night on Jeff Clayton's show, Break On Through. Then you might be hearing it second. But the thing is, you were hearing it before the general public. And of course, I had to get Abdullah to sign my copy of our All Wrestling Songs album, Falls Count Anywhere, because we do have a song about him on said album. It's called Dear Abby. Yeah. I'm not just the Rockstar Entertainment. I'm also a fanboy and a total mark. And by the way, PP Duvet, if you're watching, this one is yours, brother. This one belongs to you. So watch out. I will be giving it to you in person when I head up to Danbury in May for the Danbury Record and CD Expo. Yes. Now, Rick Del Santo just asked a valid question. Did the track listing on this album mention George South? You dang well better believe it. George South. Not only is there a song about George South, but George South does a guest vocal on this album. He cut a wicked promo, a wicked heel promo, which is, besides our performance, the highlight of the tune, Bootleg Preacher, the Ballad of George South. Rick Del Santo, if you want one, talk to me or look me up on the internet. It can be yours. Songs about Abdullah the Butcher, George South, Beauregard, Sabu, Bruiser Brody, indirectly, Invader One, Must Die, Junkyard Dog. I mean, dude. Professional wrestling coupled with rock and roll, performed by the undisputed 41-year heavyweight champions of rock and roll. Look, I know I only weigh 136, but I have more pow to the pound than your average 136-pound, 60-year-old. Just saying. Heavyweight is in the mind, not on the scale, baby. It is in the mind, not on the scale. And of course, I got Mr. Abdullah The Butcher to sign my posters as well. Being a fan is fun. Living large. Living large. Did I mention that the Falls Count Anywhere comes on your choice of delightful opaque yellow or opaque red vinyl? Collectors rejoice with this kind of stuff. Anyway, P.P. Duvet is getting his personal Abdullah the Butcher photo delivered to him when I go to the Danbury Record CD and Expo, which is being held May 17th of this year at VFW Hall number 149. Yes, I might have moved to North Carolina, but I'm not done with Connecticut just yet. It is my full intention to continue doing the Danbury Record and CD Expo as a co-promoter and as a dealer twice a year from here to eternity. So mark it. I will be there. I will be fully loaded with awesome new and used vinyl, the full complement of TPOS releases, and who knows what else I might scrounge around. I usually have 2 or 3 tables full of stuff. So if you want to see me in Connecticut, May 17th, Danbury Record and CD Expo. Oh, man. So Greg Crawford and his family were at the show in Fairhope, Alabama, which was another just really, really cool, fun show. We were told by a number of people that having a group like Anti-Scene is a rarity in a town like Fairhope. So, I mean, we are a rarity. We're a rarity no matter how you slice it, no matter what. No matter which way you take the core and stick it into the apple, it's going to come out apple. Same thing with Anti-Scene. No matter how you dissect it, no matter how you slice it, no matter how closely you examine it with the microscope, Anti-Scene is a rarity. In fact, we are unique. So we brought our unique brand of uniquity to Fairhope, Alabama. Played at Johnny Mac's. Same deal as always, man. Great hosts, great supporting acts. We had Kelsey Ray Copeland doing a set of pure, unplugged, traditional country music, which was great. Anti-Scene, and I think I've been in the band coming up on 6 years right now, so I think it's safe for me to make position statements like this. Anti-Scene basically we don't care what kind of music you play. If we like it, we want to share the bill with you. And we've shared the bill with all kinds of different types of acts. I mean, we've shared the stage with a full-blown burlesque troupe. We just shared the stage with traditional country unplugged musicians. We've played with pure noise acts. And, of course, our fair share of classy punk and hardcore bands like Future Hate, who are also on the bill. And a big salute to Dennis of Future Hate for hosting the show and making it happen. And by the way, Dennis, if you're watching, the fruit bowl you gave me as part of my vegan meal rider was superb. A delicious concoction from Soul Bowls of Fairhope, Alabama. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Crawfords, for showing up and gifting me with stuff. Look at that. The original soundtrack to Blackula on vinyl. And it's one of those synchronous things. The movie Blackula had been on my mind for quite a bit of the most recent trip we did. And I'm not going to say why, other than Anti-Scene was having one of our endless brainstorming sessions about our next couple of releases. And very indirectly and very obliquely, the topic of Blackula, the movie, was raised in my mind. And then the Crawford family present me with a vinyl copy of the Blackula soundtrack. You know what? I take that as an omen. Maybe even ominous. but definitely ominous. Greg Crawford, you just might have triggered something with that gift. I salute you. Delicious. And also, from the Crawfords, a very interesting selection of obscure 45s, a group called Needles. I love that cover. I know nothing about them. And who is this by? It's either Slut River or Off-White. From Iowa, home of Gary Forney, 2012. Looks very interesting. Never heard of them. This is one of those dealios that I really am a sucker for. The blank label, blank handwritten labels, numbered of 300. I mean, right away I'm in love with it. So when I get my turntable set up, you better believe I'm going to spin these. And if I am able to go ahead and get the radio gig that I want to get here in North Carolina, you're going to hear it on the radio. But that's a different subject for the way distant future. And of course, a 45 by the Bulimics featuring Texas Terry. Thank you, Crawfords. Really appreciate that. Something was delivered to me. Oh boy, something was delivered to me. I wasn't expecting this. I kind of knew that this was in existence, but I didn't know I was going to be getting one of these so soon. But Jeff Clayton, the brutal dictator with the heart of gold of anti-scene, the heel prez, the unimpeachable president for life, handed me this record. It said, Jeff Clayton, I can't read it. What's on this thing? He said, turn it over. I said, oh, I'll turn it over. Well, it didn't have this writing all over it when it was given to me, but I took care of that. Can you guys read that? Test pressing. Test pressing. If you can't read it, I'll spell it out for you. Anti-scene time machine. Test pressing. Anti-scene time machine. Test pressing. From our label TKO, who also happen to run their own pressing plant called Cascade Records. If you're a record collecting freak and geek like I am, then you're salivating at least as much as I am. I love test pressings. Test pressings are so much fun. Generic label artwork, usually generic cover art. These are the very, very first records off the press. And that's why they're called test pressings. These are experimental, not experimental, but there are literally pressings designed to test the quality of the product. And they are not meant for the general public. They are meant only for band members, label executives. Sometimes they go out as promos to radio stations, but usually they're designed for in-house only, and they're made in very small quantities. You can see in this case, according to the sticker, the hype sticker, as we say, 8 copies. 8 copies. I thrive on this kind of stuff. So thank you, boss Jeff Clayton, and I'll tell you, the incentive for me to get my turntable hooked up is growing by the second. I need to get my turntable hooked up so I can hear this thing. I've heard the finished mixes, and they sound pretty dang good. So on full-fledged vinyl over an ear-splitting Loudenboomer home stereo unit, woo! I can hardly wait. And old Harry the cat, who is now lurking down there, if you see the backdrop moving, that's because he's nuzzling up against it. He still hasn't overcome his shyness. He has not jumped up onto my lap to hog the camera like he normally does. He'll be warming up. He'll be warming up. What other goodies did we get on tour? Well, we got some set lists. Here's a genuine, honest-to-gosh Future Hate set list. Future Hate rocks so hard, it almost scares me. And, of course, the gig posters like I just showed you. And I got a few more of them. I really collect this stuff. I love these things. Here, check this out. A real good stack of posters. It's another one of the great things about being in a band here. My compadre Walt Wheat Walt W. Wheat, aka WWW, says that he played his test pressing yesterday and it sounds fantastic. Most excellent. Most excellent. You know, Walt and I have had this ongoing debate over the supremacy of boiled peanuts versus deep fried peanuts. We did not get a chance to address that issue on this trip. I didn't see any deep fried peanuts because that seems to be indigenous to eastern Tennessee. And I don't recall seeing any boiled peanuts either, oddly enough. I mean, we were pretty deep south and I did not come across any boiled peanuts that I can recall. So the controversy will just have to rage on. Boiled peanuts versus deep fried peanuts. What's the best way to eat a peanut? The world may never know. Greg Crawford says boiled. Greg Crawford, have you ever had a deep fried peanut before? Be honest. Let me know. Has Greg Crawford ever had deep fried peanuts? Posters. These posters have nothing to do with us, but these are all from Tribbles, and they're all works of art. And I think it's great because these things 99% of the time just get tossed in the garbage and don't get saved. So I really kind of view it as my mission to rescue these things from obscurity. Plus the fact that I just love the way they look. I think that the flyer and the gig poster is/are valid works of art. And they're unique to each individual event. And once the event is done and gone, the poster is done and gone. Lost to the ether forever. It's kind of the same reason why I record every show I go to, because I just can't stand the fact of that incredible music going into outer space and just being dissipated forever and ever and ever to the edge of the universe without being saved for consumption by human ears. It's kind of one of my missions, you know what I mean, Jelly Bean. All right, let's see. Walt Wheat says that we passed a couple of fruit stands that had painted signs offering boiled peanuts on the way to Daphne. I missed them. I might have been asleep. I did do a lot of sleeping on this trip, I must say. It's the only anti-scene trip I've done so far where I didn't do any driving. And I don't mind driving at all. In fact, I kind of like driving. But the chips just sort of fell to where I did not drive. And I'm the kind of dude that if I'm not driving, I have a real hard time staying awake. If I'm not engaged, I tend to go like this. And so I did a lot of going like this in my very cozy back bench in the Anti-Scene tour van. Anyway, I digress. Posters. Here's one. This relates to us directly also from Tribbles in Piedmont. I, of course, being the fanboy that I am, got it signed by every member of every band that I could get my hands on. Is it worth any money? I doubt it. But this is like my hope chest right here. This is my scrapbook. This is my memory of a great night in Piedmont, South Carolina with two super fine bands. Well, we got a bunch of comments coming on here. I'll have to check these out, which I will do later. That was the tour swag. I got some stuff in the mail. Oh boy. I'm still taking mail at P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. The mail is being forwarded to me for the next few months. After that expiration, after the forwarding order expires, I'll be opening a brand new P.O. Box right here in Newton, North Carolina. So keep an eye, an ear, a feel, utilize all of your senses in preparation for the reception of the information about my brand new P.O. Box. Because it's happening. It is happening. Did I mention I'm a fan? I'm a fan and I send away for stuff. Every now and again, I'll get a hankering to hear something or know more about something or research something, and I'll just have to pinch my nose in and jump in with both feet or do a swan dive. And it was recently brought to my attention, you see, and I didn't know this. I know an awful lot, as I'm fond of saying, I know a lot about what I know a lot about. Did you follow that? I'll say it again. I know a lot about what I know a lot about. But I don't know everything. God knows I try. I try so hard to be a know-it-all. But haven't succeeded yet. Not even when it comes to the plop topic of Mr. GG Allin. Now, you guys have heard me talk a lot about GG Allin. A lot. In fact, a few weeks ago, I did an entire 2-hour episode. Count them. 2 solid hours of Tent Talks Tunes devoted to the psychology of GG Allin. And that episode of Tent Talks Tunes has gotten more views than probably every other episode I've done combined. You know what? Great. As long as people are watching and listening and commenting and interacting, that's all I care about. So you would think that in order for this guy here to do a 2-hour Tent Talks Tunes about one subject, he would know pretty much there is to know about the subject, right? Well, you might think that, but there's always something to learn. And I never knew that there is an audio recording of David Peel. Now, if you guys don't know David Peel, I'll give you a thumbnail synopsis. David Peel was essentially a New York City street musician. He was active from the late 60s all the way up into the 90s. Genuinely unique, weird, outsider musician. And very much of the streets. Very much of the streets. And I'm going to interrupt this by saying, Kyle, how do you pronounce your last name? Moring? Kyle, definitely great to see you in Atlanta. Thanks for coming out to the show. Appreciate it greatly. Remember the chant? Abdullah, Abdullah, Abdullah. Yes, that's what happened. So yeah, David Peel, genuine weirdo outsider. He actually got signed to Elektra Records and did 2 albums. He managed to be friends with John Lennon and Yoko Ono and collaborated with them in some degree or another. I'm not exactly sure what. And ended up hooking up with GG Allin and releasing some of Gigi's early stuff. And I never knew that Gigi actually played at least one gig with David Peel. At least one. Not singing, not playing guitar, not playing bass, but playing drums. GG Allin on drums for a full 30-minute set backing up David Peel. Now, one thing that people may or may not know was that GG Allin was a, I'll say, superb drummer. He was a really, really good drummer. He was good. I had the pleasure of releasing a 45 RPM record by his first ever band called Malpractice. Malpractice. Available on my Discogs, eBay, and Bandcamp. If you want to hear GG Allin behind the drums in 1977 playing some very tasty 70s original rock, I recommend that you check out Malpractice. The guy really could drum. I mean, he was really good. People who knew him described him as gifted on the drums, and I don't think I would disagree with that. So here it is, a complete concert by the weird and wonderful David Peel with Gigi playing drums. And it's, you know, it's cool. It's like, it's what you would expect from David Peel. The drumming on these tracks, I wouldn't call it outlandishly spectacular or earth-shattering, but it's good, it's solid, and it's the only example that I know of a complete concert with GG Allin just being the drummer. So once I learned of its existence, I needed to get the actual CD, and there it is, a CD reissue of his album King of Punk by David Peel and Death. Look at that guy. You can tell he's the king of punk, right? That ain't punk rock. I don't know what is. Haven't cracked it open yet, but you can be sure that I will. So yes, the scholarship and the fandom continues unabated. Voila. What else did I get in the mail? Well, I found a really good bargain. Speaking of outsiders and eccentrics, as fond as I am of outsiders and eccentrics, I'm particularly fond of English outsiders and eccentrics because their brand of eccentricity is very different from American eccentricity. And probably the top of the heap, as far as I'm concerned, is the wonderful Ivor Cutler. And this is an album of his that I never knew existed. It's called A Flat Man. As you can probably see, I haven't cracked it open yet. But it's got 48 of his unique and absolutely charming and strange little vignettes. They're either long poems or very short stories. He quite often accompanies himself on a harmonium. And he's just like this little tiny Scotch guy with a super charming Scottish accent doing utterly wacky and whimsical vignettes. One of my favorite vignettes of his of all is I think the actual title is Get Away from the Wall. And the basic lyrical gist is get away from that wall. That's my wall. Get away from that wall. The wall belongs to me. And it might not sound like much, but when you actually hear him singing that with the harmonium accompaniment, man, it's wild. Just wild. So I'll be very happy to sink my eye teeth into this Ivor Cutler CD. And there's my pal Mike Lesser from Vancouver, BC, who says that he's been checking out Ivor Cutler since about 1980. I think it's about the first time I ever heard Ivor Cutler, too. It was on Radio Free Living Room. And Mike, let's compare notes. Radio Free Living Room on WLRN in Miami. It was Miami's only punk rock / underground radio show. And every Monday night I would stay up late. Didn't matter if there was school the next day or work the next day. I would stay up as long as I could with a blank cassette in my jam box and my finger on the pause button, just waiting for Eric Moss, the DJ, to play a song that caught my ear. And the second I heard a song that caught my ear, I would press that pause button and record the song. And I learned so much about so many because of Radio Free Living Room. And I might still have the mixtape somewhere in which Ivor Cutler and Linda Hurst do a song called Women of the World. And it was great. I knew from that moment on I needed to hear more from both of these people, but Ivor Cutler was the one who had about 1 million releases. I've never heard of Linda Hurst anywhere except for that one record. But Ivor Cutler, oh man. Whimsical eccentricity in the English tradition at its absolute finest. Absolute finest. Got a good mail order bargain on this one right here, kids. Yes, outsider. Yes, weird. Yes, bizarre. Yes, song poems. Oh boy, I hadn't said song poems yet in this show. Rod Keith, a.k.a. Rod Rogers, a.k.a. Rude Keith, a.k.a. John Doe, a.k.a. I don't think anybody's even discovered all the pseudonyms that this guy has gone under. But the king of the song poem genre, Rod Keith, a compilation album of his stuff that I had never heard before. Black Phoenix Blues. More incentive for me to get that turntable going, I swear. It's got to happen soon. It's got to happen. Kind of the same deal. If you guys like the weird, wacky outsider stuff, look up Rod Keith. I guarantee you've never heard anything like him. And if you're like me, that'll set you down the long and winding road of the song poem world, which is infinitely rewarding if you have enough patience. If you don't have patience, of course, you can go to my Discogs, my eBay, and my Bandcamp, TPOS, and you can check out my own compilation of song poems called Song Poem Insanity. It's available on cassette and CD. It is a compilation that I personally assembled from my own personal collection of song poem 45 RPM singles. And this stuff it ranges anywhere from good to bad to weird to should have been a hit. And in order to put it together, I slogged through dozens and dozens of song poem records, the vast majority of which are not that great. Either boring or fair to middling at best. But you know, when you hit that one nugget, when you hear that one song poem that sort of jumps out at you, that's got either the wild music or the bizarre lyrics or the good music or the good lyrics, it's worth it. That is an instance where the catch is at least as good as the chase. So yeah, check it out. Song Poem Insanity on TPOS. You can listen to it on Bandcamp. How about some more weirdos, outsiders, and eccentrics? I didn't really mean for this episode of Tent Talks Tunes to go in this direction, but it just seems like that's the way it's gone because that's the way I am. How many of you people out there know this guy's name? Jandek. Now you want to talk about mysterious and enigmatic and way on the outside of pretty much any reality anywhere. Jandek. Now Jandek is about as outside as it gets. Very brief capsule synopsis. He started out sometime in the 70s, remained completely, utterly anonymous. Nobody knew who he was. Nobody knew anything about him. He didn't do interviews. The only photos you ever saw of him were on the covers of his albums. And he put out, I don't even know how many albums, dozens and dozens of albums. Personally, I can't listen to any of them. I cannot listen to Jandek. I've got a pretty tough palate, and my eardrums are made out of leather, but I can't do Jandek. I just can't. He's got his guitars tuned to some kind of really weird atonal tuning. And he just kind of moans and groans his way through all these songs that are played at a torturously slow pace. I can't do it. I just can't. I've tried. I've tried playing any number of Jandek records. Can't do it. But I got to admit, I'm fascinated by the concept. I really am. I mean, I admire what the guy does. I admire his sheer dogged persistence and the fact that he's never once backed down from his position of complete anonymity, even though nowadays he plays gigs, and because of the internet, you know, there's more knowledge about him. He's still completely reclusive and does not cooperate at all with publicity. The thing about Jandek back in the old days, pardon me while I wet my whistle, was that he had his albums out on vinyl. And if you wrote to Jandek personally, he would send you a price list with a per unit price. But if you bought, like, say, 20 or more, he'd give you a bulk discount, like a wholesale price. So when I had my store, it was great. I would order these box lots of Jandek records, and the people out there, excuse me again, sorry guys, I don't know why I'm all choked up. The people who do like Jandek, of which there were quite a few, would just snap up these albums. I sold a lot of Jandek records in my day. And just out of random curiosity, I wanted to see if Jandek was still at it and still in business, and sure enough, he still is. Only now he's all CD. And he's also put out not one, but two, I get my hands on them, 2 books of poetry, which is a new thing for Jandek. And the same deal, if you buy 25 or more, or whatever it is, you get the wholesale price. So I said, you know what? I'm in love with the concept. I'm sure there are Jandek fans out there. So I just mixed and matched 25 different Jandek titles, books, CDs, including really bizarre stuff like a 9 CD box set, a 6 CD box set, live albums, whatever. I mean, just so much Jandek to choose from. I ordered 25 different ones, got the wholesale price, and if you visit me at my table in Danbury, I will have live on the table Jandek CDs and books from the mysterious man himself. And if you can actually listen to that stuff, more power to you. If you're like me and you just love the idea, more power to you still. Ryan Solt that says that he's looking up Rod Keefe. Please let me know what you think. My inquiring mind wants to know. So in the middle of all this touring and mail order and picking up great stuff and moving my entire life from Connecticut to North Carolina, somehow I managed to become mildly, and I will stress the word mildly obsessed with Iron Butterfly. Mildly. Now this came about because of a couple of factors. One of them being that in this day and age of cassettes, and you know my label, TPOS on Discogs, Bandcamp, and eBay, is built on a foundation of cassettes. And so in looking up cassettes to sell, I came across a cutout catalog of all, overstock, dead stock, dead titles, whatever. And I'm looking through this catalog of overstock, and it sent me back to the fond, wonderful days of living in South Florida and digging through the vinyl overstock and cutout bins at record stores like Specs, Music Makers, Vibrations, department stores like Jefferson's, Sears, the Treasury. All these places had overstocks and cutouts. And I remembered very clearly this one particular album being a staple in the cutout bins, and that was this one right here, Scorching Beauty by Iron Butterfly. Now, of course, if you got ears, somewhere in your life you've heard, "In a Gadda Da Vida, baby, don't you know that I love you? In a Gadda Da Vida, baby, don't you know that my heart is the truth? In a Gadda Da Vida." I mean, come on. Who doesn't know In a Gadda Da Vida? Who doesn't love In a Gadda Da Vida? Even the 29-minute version with the drum solo in the middle. Man, that was one of my favorite songs when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I got the album. And being the sort of completist that I am, I of course got Iron Butterfly Metamorphosis, Iron Butterfly Heavy, Iron Butterfly Ball, Iron Butterfly Live, which is terrible. I'm a very forgiving guy, but man, terrible. 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 But it made me think about the Scorching Beauty album and how it completely clogged out the cutout bins when I was a kid. And I did have a copy. I picked it up in a record collection somewhere. And I listened to it a couple of times, and I remembered it being really good. So, of course, because of my completist nature, I dragged it up. I looked it up on YouTube because my record player's not hooked up yet. So I looked it up on YouTube, okay? I played it on YouTube. Sorry. YouTube. It does have its uses. And good Lord, I came to the conclusion that this is not only the best Iron Butterfly record. It's a fantastic record, man. This is a really, really excellent 70s rock album. It's got a heavy streak of glam rock in it. The vocals are very reminiscent of Sparks. There's one song on here that sounds just like Hawkwind. I mean Lemmy Hawkwind with strummed loud chord playing bass guitar. There's not one bad song on this record. This is, I mean, it's a really, really good record. And it just made me think about the savage irony and the kind of tragic hand of fate that dictated that Iron Butterfly's biggest selling album, which is of course A Gadda Da Vida, was made at basically the very beginning of their career. And if you listen to that record, what you hear is four basically competent guys whose reach probably exceeds their grasp. Doug Ingle, the lead vocalist, was an okay singer, very limited range. You know, he doesn't drive you up a tree, but he was okay. Ron Bushy, the drummer, really only had one beat. This kind of dit, 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 dit. He was very much a metronomic sort of timekeeper, and that's about all he ever did. You know, the guitar player was good, the bass player was good, but you could sort of tell these guys really came right straight from the garage into the recording studio. And besides A Gadda Da Vida, the songs on their early albums really do sound very garage rock. Maybe updated a bit for the 70s. What they had was simply one of the greatest riffs of all time, which was A Gadda Da Vida. Man, you can't argue with that riff. There is no denying that riff. And they parlayed it into a hit. Good on them. The problem was they just didn't have the musical chops to continue that success. They did get better and better as time went on. Like each succeeding Iron Butterfly record was more musically proficient, had better songwriting, better performing. They went through a couple of lineup changes. They only got better as time went on. But I think it's kind of ironic that their biggest hit and their biggest selling album was kind of their undoing, because the rather crude, unskilled playing and writing on that album, I would say, became what they were known for. And of course, there's the infamous story of when they went on tour and the opening act was Led Zeppelin. I mean, like Led Zeppelin came right out the chute, sounding like a volcano going off. I would have been terrified to follow them on stage. And I will dare say, I'm pretty good at what I do. But who wants to follow Led Zeppelin, you know? And these guys with their A Gadda Da Vida and their limited skill set were pretty much doomed. So that followed them around for their whole career. You know, their limited skill set followed them throughout their career, and they just sort of had diminishing returns as time went on. Nick Stone chimes in and says that the entire Ball album, which was the follow-up to A Gadda Da Vida, is excellent. It's really good. I personally would not go so far as excellent, but there's about half the songs on there really kill. There are some real nuggets on that album. And that's the same for every Iron Butterfly album, except for this one, in which every song kills. And that's where the irony comes in, because by the time this album came out, Iron Butterfly had already broken up. They regrouped, and by the time they regrouped with two original members and two other guys, they were just like killer musicians, excellent songwriters, knew their way around the studio. They could write, they could produce, they could arrange. They just murder it. This album is so good, but nobody cared. It was their best album, and it went straight into the cutout bins. This copy, no, it's cut out. I was going to say it's not a cutout, but it is a cutout. It's got the cutout notch, which gives it away as being an album that was an overstock remainder. Don't know if you guys can see that, but there it is, the telltale notch. I've never seen a copy of this album that wasn't cut or notched. It's a real shame because it rocks really hard. So if you guys want a recommendation for something to listen to, Iron Butterfly, Scorching Beauty, it's on YouTube. And if you're the type to prowl the record stores and the swap meets like I am, you should be able to find it out there real cheap. There is no reason in the world to pay any more